Welcome to the She Found Motherhood Podcast. We are doctors Sarah and Alicia, maternity physicians and moms who have been through it all. We want to empower you with knowledge so you can have the best pregnancy, birth, and postpartum experience you can.
She Found Health and She Found Motherhood is meant for general medical information only. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. This information does not apply to every situation. If you have questions or if you've received different advice, please contact your healthcare provider. Always seek the advice of your physician or another qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The views expressed by She Found Health and She Found Motherhood and our guests are not representative of any of the institutions with which we are affiliated. Some of our podcast episodes are sponsored so that we can keep getting great info out there to you, our listeners. We only partner with companies that we truly believe in. Some of our links and suggestions may be affiliates, and we would appreciate you using them to help fund this important work. Now let's get to it.
Good morning, Rachel. Welcome to the She Found Motherhood Podcast.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited we finally made this work.
I know it's been like a long time in the making.
I know, that's life, right? The pace of many people's lives these days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is also very to the point about why we're here.
Absolutely.
So I thought it might be really great to start just by asking you to introduce yourself, who you are, a little bit about the work that you do, and how we landed here together.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an acupuncturist and an integrative health coach. I have a background in exercise science, kinesiology, health behavior change, and I'm based in Victoria. And I really came to this work and this focus in my practice around nervous system health and the sort of trickle effect that happens when we're stressed, we're overwhelmed, we're anxious, we're living in that go mode, and what impact that has on the rest of our body, on the rest of our lives. From my own experiences, I think like many of us who are in these helping professions, we go into this field because we've had an experience ourselves. For me, it was this ongoing, what I would call when we look at like fight or flight energy, that sort of ongoing flight energy of just like on to the next through the education and training. And it led me to a place of real burnout. And so originally with my background in exercise science, I thought when I was an acupuncturist, I wanted to go into orthopedics and really focus on pain and musculoskeletal conditions. And then when I was really in the depths of burnout, and maybe not right when I was in the depths of it, but when I had come out of it and started to build my own toolkit, I realized that was the area that I was so passionate about, because it's something that so many people that I work with and that are walking around and probably listening to this podcast are experiencing themselves.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's interesting. Like I have many hats, and the reason I pursued coaching and supporting female identifying physicians and mothers is because of all the experiences I had and the burnout and the overwhelm. And it's really funny because I'm still early on in my journey, and I'm like watching my energy and watching your energy. And I'm like, oh man, I need more Rachel in my life. They're just like, you bring such a calm presence, and also like a presence, which I think a lot of us don't have, right? We're so busy worrying about what happened or thinking about what's to come. So I'm really grateful for you coming here today and also sharing your story and your experiences. And the path that you took, right, is maybe not what some people would expect coming from like that science and that kinesiology background. So can you share a little bit about what it is, the work that you do, before we dive into the nitty gritty of the nervous system and how we can take ours back?
Well, first I should say thank you for that. Felt really nice compliment. And I think I've always been told that I'm like a naturally very calm person. And I always say you should ask my husband. But I think it's that practice, and some of it's just how we're wired, right?
Yeah.
So there are people who have that pep, that like on all the time, like you.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so exhausting. And so I think it's part of it is, yes, we want to find that place of how can we meet closer to the middle, but also as individuals, we are hardwired individually.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we embrace who we are and what that wiring is, and then try to work within it.
Oh, well, and well, now right back at you. Thank you, because that makes me feel better. Because I'm like, okay, yeah, it's true, right? I come with high energy, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, right?
Yeah, not at all.
Oh, you're so amazing.
Sometimes we just need that reflected back to us, right?
Totally,
Yeah.
right? The beauty of coaching.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah, yeah. So, can you share a little bit before we get in actually a little bit about your training, the beyond the sort of the academic, but into the is it Chinese medicine?
Traditional
What's your
Chinese medicine.
yeah, do you like I'm like, what is it called? Yeah,
Yeah.
traditional Chinese
Wow.
medicine. Yeah, and what that training was like and how that sort of helped you evolve as a practitioner and a provider.
Absolutely. So I think it's helpful maybe to take that one step back before acupuncture school of why I chose to go into that field,
Yes,
which
please.
was that, as I had mentioned, my background was in exercise science. So like really around like hard sciences. I was focused on doing a lot of like kinesiology, clinical exercise physiology, working with clinical populations. And I really felt like in school, I think probably like any profession, we're taught like the textbook case. So you're taught like, okay, this person comes in, they present with this, and then if you do this, all will be well. Right. And it's like this perfect, beautiful equation. And then we get into the real world, and it's not at all like that because no one presents with the perfect symptoms the way that the textbook says it's going to. And life is not like that. And so as I started working with these people more, I started recognizing that I could have the perfect prescription for somebody, the perfect plan, but if they weren't on board with it was never going to work. It did not. And so that's what, for my undergrad in kinesiology, that's what led me to do my master's in health behavior change and starting to look more at the psychology around health behavior shifts and how
Mhm.
do we understand motivation and adherence for people, and really around building habits, building identity as someone who wants to take on this change, who is taking on this change. And what are the tools that we can use to support people in doing that so that your perfect prescription ends up moving out into
Yes.
the world?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm like, for those who can't see, because this is a podcast, I'm like nodding in the background because one of the things I always say as like a practitioner of Western medicine is we need to stop shooting people,
Mhm.
right? Like it's because you're right. Like if we have all the tools and the ideas and the perfect prescription, if people aren't in a place where they feel empowered and inspired, and I don't love the word motivated, I don't know another better word, but that prescription is useless.
Yeah. I was talking to a naturopathic doctor the other day, and he was saying, like, it's really about how do we weave this into the fabric of your life.
Yes.
And I loved that image that came to
Hmm.
mind when he said that, because it really is, I always say to people, it's not about making a change for right now. Yes, we'll feel better, but it's about long term. It's about how do we make this a lifestyle so that you're not right back where you are finding yourself right now.
Totally. Totally. And this is like what we're all learning on a day-to-day basis. So I'm curious, and you probably were going to go here anyways, but if you can share how you went from that master's
Mhm.
in health, is it health behavior? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I was a master's in kinesiology, but my
Okay.
focus was on health behavior change.
Okay. And what led you from that, which sounds like an incredible master's, into traditional Chinese medicine?
Yeah. So I felt like with the undergrad in like kinesiology, biomechanics, anatomy, it's okay, I got body.
Yeah.
Then I moved into my master's, which was more like the mind.
Ooh, interesting.
And then I like, and every time it was like I worked in the field and I'm like, something's missing here.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I didn't have the language to articulate exactly what it was, but I knew that something was missing and how I was able to support and interact with people. So then I had the mind. Then it was like, what about this person as like a whole being, as one entity that is part of their environment, that is part of this whole world, that is what's their soul, their spirit. And it took me a long time to start to think about what would help me to fill in the gap of that language. And I went back to when I was a teenager. I was a ballet dancer growing up, and I had parents who were quite open to what was then and sometimes now called alternative medicine.
Language is important, right?
Yes, yes. And my parents were big into acupuncture. My dad was someone who like threw out his back all the time. At that point in like the early 80s, it was like you're on bed rest, right? And which is
Oh,
time
terrible.
changed.
Yes,
Yeah.
right?
And he was finally, someone suggested go see this acupuncturist. And my mom and I took him, I think I was maybe like 8. And it was one of those big walk up apartments in Vancouver. And he had to walk up the stairs. We could see in the fire escape. And he's like hobbling up, like it was painful.
Mhm.
And an hour later, we pick him up. And I say he came bounding down the stairs. He's like, I don't think I was bounding, but like walking much more briskly, far less pain. And I remember thinking like, oh, there's something here. Like,
Mhm.
what's that?
Mhm.
Because I was a ballet dancer growing up, I had a lot of injuries. And so after that point, I always said, take me to the acupuncturist. So I developed this relationship with this acupuncturist really early on. I didn't really understand anything about what he was doing. But as time went on, I started to learn more and more. And it was still a huge mystery to me. But when I was at that point, fast forward, and I'm like, what's that missing piece? Traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture kept coming back to me. So
Mhm.
it was in Victoria at the time where I still live. And at that point, there were like 5 TCM colleges in Victoria, which is
Wow.
crazy for such a
Yes.
small town. There's far fewer now. So it was very accessible for me to choose a school and go. So that's what I did. And definitely the first term, I just sat there. I don't understand anything. Coming from such a
Yes.
mind, I was like, I just don't understand. The words are like the same, but they mean something different. What's going on here? And I had a good friend who was finishing up the program as I was starting. And I said to her one day, what is this? Just,
Mm.
I don't get it. And she's
Yeah.
just take your first term and memorize everything. There's so much, I'm sure, like in school, just
Mhm.
so much memorization.
Mhm.
And she's just memorize everything. It'll all come together.
Like trust.
Yeah. Trust that it will, like, this is a thing,
Mhm.
basically, is like what she was
Mhm.
telling me. And it did come together. And as we started to learn more about the different organ systems and you put some of the language aside and just understand the broader concepts, I always say, I think whoever translated things from the ancient Chinese texts did everyone in modern day a little bit of a disservice because a lot of the words that are used are Western medical terms,
Mm.
yet
Mhm.
they have much broader definitions. So it's very confusing, right? Like it's very confusing for people and people who are very Western trained to say, no, that's not that.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes we have to just put like nomenclature aside and focus more on what the concepts are.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's so fascinating. So, God, we could go off on a tangent, and that's for another podcast about how much we need more overlap, right? Of like Western medicine and traditional Chinese medicine. But we'll put a pin in that
Yeah.
conversation because right now we want to focus on just understanding, helping folks come back to themselves, right? So, with the background you have, it's freaking incredible. I don't think I knew that actually, that you had done that master's and being a fellow like academic nerd. We need to bond over this next time
Yeah.
we're in person. But our hope today is to just remind people of what their nervous system is and whether you are a physician who has learned about this in Western medical school, being open to understanding different interpretations so that we can build tools to overcome all this overwhelm and this burnout that everyone is experiencing, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it is. It's so important always to come back to those basics. And so when we think about the nervous system, a big part of the nervous system that we tend to talk about is the autonomic nervous system.
Mhm.
I always describe this as all of the automatic things that are happening in your body that thank goodness you don't have to think about and tell your heart to beat and your lungs to breathe and where the blood to go in your body. But that's essentially what it is controlling,
Mhm.
right? It's sending those messages through your body. And it does that based on the level of activation of your system. And I think that's a really important differentiation because sometimes I'll be talking to people and I'll say, how are your stress levels? And they'll say, there's lots of people who are like, oh gosh, off the charts. But
Mhm.
there's also a lot of people who will say, no, I'm not that stressed. But all the other pieces of what they're telling me tells me that their system is stressed.
Mhm.
So it
Mhm.
may not be registering psychologically that like you're feeling really overwhelmed or exhausted or like you have 1,000 things to do in a day, but you are go all day long.
Mhm.
And so that's that activation system. And I think about this range between our parasympathetic nervous system, which is more of that relaxed state,
Mhm.
to our sympathetic nervous system, which is more of our activated stress response,
Mhm.
as like a scale of activation.
Yeah. Almost a continuum, right? Where are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd say most of us are what? Sympathetic. Sympathetic, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Sympathetic, foot on the gas, right?
Yeah.
So that's just
Yeah.
that go, go, go. And that can show up in a lot of different ways. And so over time, we start to see these longer term effects. Short term, that stress response is really important. It's what keeps us alive. It's what
Mhm.
has evolved our species really for thousands of years because that system in our body can turn on and we can dodge some very stressful situations. The challenge is that those stressful situations, like wild animals, that's not typically most people's daily stressors.
Mm-mm.
So that system was really devised to turn on, big response, big activation, big stress response, survival, and then come back to a place of neutral and into a place of relaxation. We weren't meant to live in that activated state. And so, yes, we're not facing like wild tigers on the street as we go to work, but we are having how many phone notifications
Ugh.
across a day,
Mhm.
how many like multiple forms of communication, how many hats are people wearing, right? And when we started this and you were saying how
Mhm.
many hats you wear,
Mhm.
and that's the norm of,
Totally.
holding multiple positions, having kids, being a partner, perhaps taking care of parents. There's so many different roles on top of taking care of yourself, maybe having some time with your friends, like managing a household, all the things, right? And so we're doing all of these things, which is really keeping us in that activated state.
Mhm. Yeah, we're living in a state of, like, chronic stress. And it's funny because your example, I love the tiger. There's this other example, and I just wanted to share because it may be a good metaphor for some people, and I did the Confident Parents Thriving Kids. It's this program that's in BC for parents, and it's targeted there's 2 streams. One's targeted towards anxiety, and it talks about and it's the same with your stress response, is, like, when the smoke detector is going off, but your house isn't on fire, you've just burnt cookies, right? And so we're just burning cookies here, like nothing major, but we're all reacting as if our house is chronically on fire, right? So it's this the threat is still present, it's just much lower, and yet our brain can't tell the difference. So it's just like sending these stress response signals.
I love that
Yes,
analogy.
right?
Yeah. And I think the other piece too is because there's so many stressors building on top of one another, we don't actually have an opportunity to close the loop on that.
Yes.
So it's like I give that example of you're driving, you get cut off. It's very stressful in the moment. You're like, oh my gosh, you could have killed me. Like,
Mhm.
but no one is hurt. Cars weren't hit. Everyone's okay. And then so the stressor itself is gone. But then you get home 45 minutes later and you're like, the person cut me off and I can't believe it. And you're carrying it
Mhm.
if it was
Mhm.
like in that moment or even more escalated. So we're not having that opportunity to discharge that stress response that is building up. And when they're just sort of layering one on top of another, it then becomes very hard to let that go. And it becomes almost like an armor. It's like, how do I let go of that? I'm afraid I'm going to end up like a puddle on the floor.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so funny you say that because last week I had given this presentation and then someone was like, gave me some feedback on it, which was fine, but really misguided. And I was super frustrated because I was like, that's not the point. And I was just perseverating over it. And I went to bed and then I woke up in the morning and I was still annoyed. And then I went for a long run and I did hill repeats. And then I was like, I feel better. right? Because I closed the loop, right? Like got the frustration out of my system. And for me, movement is a really powerful way. But it's so true when we don't, and it just builds and builds, and then we break out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the boiling water on the stove and the lid is tight on. And the lid is like
Yes.
popping up and down. If you just popped the lid a tiny bit and the
Yes.
steam come out, like everything would still cook
Yeah.
and yet nothing would explode on your stove.
Yeah. Oh, I love that visual. Yeah. Yeah.
Let the steam out.
Yeah.
Little
Right.
bits at a time. Yeah.
Hey, Sarah,
Yes, Alicia.
do you ever find that people bring in their birth plans to show you in the office and they're not even hitting the important points?
I do. And I think that they don't even consider all the options when really we often don't have any idea of what to expect going into labor.
Agreed. So what we did was we put together a free birth plan download, but we also put together a little course about how you can fill it out, talking about what the real purpose of a birth plan should be and how it can really help you have the best birth you can.
We've got an area that covers your medical history and your pregnancy. And then we've got a section that helps you walk through and figure out when you might accept certain interventions. Not just yes or no, but at what point and at what stage in your labor and birth experience.
We go over some examples through case studies to help you get an idea of what this could look like. And we also think it's really important to use your birth plan as a jumping off point for conversations with your partner and your provider. And we talk a little bit about how you can start doing this with our birth plan course.
Absolutely. If you're interested in learning more, head to our website, www.shefoundhealth.com/courses.
See you there.
So we've got this state where many of us are living in this sort of chronic tendency towards being in this super sympathetic overdrive. How do you coach people and what tools do you support people with, A, to identify that, and then B, realistic tools and strategies that people can use, because it's not like we can quit all our jobs and stop taking care of our parents and our dogs and our kids and all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, as you said, like the biggest and most important step is that awareness piece,
Mhm.
right? And for some people, that awareness comes when we start to experience symptoms. That could be more prolonged anxiety. That could be insomnia. That could be digestive issues.
Mhm.
That could be hormonal imbalances that are leading to things like painful or irregular periods, night sweats, challenges with fertility. These are
Yes.
big ranges of symptoms. And so the first thing is identification. And the hope, of course, is that we're not at that place where we're experiencing this big onslaught of
Mhm.
significant health symptoms to bring awareness to it. Sometimes it is, a lot of times it is, unfortunately. But I find it really helpful for people to just take, like, it can be 10 minutes and think about, maybe it's the current day that you're on or like a typical day, and write out all the things that you did
Mhm.
and then put a scale of 1 to 10. 1, super chill, relaxed, 10 being like off the charts go. And being like the person that I am, I like to then color code it. So
I would totally do that too.
yeah, thinking of that idea of the continuum,
Mhm.
maybe that parasympathetic, that relaxed state is more in blue. Red is going to be your stress out state.
Mhm.
They make a nice purple in the middle, which is what
Mhm.
we're ideally going for. But just get a sense of, okay, I'm spending a huge amount of my time feeling this way.
Mhm.
And doing that recall can be really helpful. I am 1 week into wearing an aura ring.
Yeah, I have one too. They're amazing, aren't they?
It's amazing. And I think it's really cool because it doesn't give you all your stats right away, right? It takes a while to calibrate because it wants to understand your baseline. And so then yesterday, the new thing it started measuring for me was the level of stress through the day.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, this is cool because
Mhm.
this is exactly what I just explained,
Mhm.
but it's the measured version versus a subjective account of it. But that's the same sort of thing, is recognizing where you are on that scale.
Mhm.
So that awareness is, I think, the most important step. And sometimes for people, it can be doing that over picking 2 days a week and just doing a quick recall. It can
Mhm.
take you 5 minutes, right? It's not a huge ask in terms of building that level of awareness. And then the second piece, like once you've done that, is to start to look at some patterns. So it may be like, wow, every time that I am driving this route to this place, I feel really activated.
Mhm.
Oh, it's because there's construction on that road. Like
Mhm.
maybe you could take 5 more minutes and do a larger loop, but you would be so much more relaxed
Yeah.
going into your day. Right. So we don't have to start to have these giant, profound resolutions. They can be really small things, but everyone's triggers are going to be different that we have
Yeah.
to identify what a possible solution would be. For me, I really think like starting my day in a more relaxed state. So for it can mean waking up half an hour earlier, 15 minutes earlier, and taking that time. I know, especially for the moms out there,
Mhm.
where it's like that could be your only time in the day when it's just you and it's quiet. And, what you do in that time, like those are precious moments of setting yourself up for your day because we're building the resilience. We're like, as we apply these tools, we're like building the cushioning so that as the day goes on and the stressors start to wear away, you're not left like down to the bone.
Yes, and I couldn't agree more about the morning. I just think so many of us start our days in this, like, immediately reactive mode, right? If you check your phone and you look at texts or emails you've gotten overnight or social media, you're already prioritizing other people's needs over your own, right? So even if you can take 5 minutes and I don't know, I journal gratitude and I do some scripting because I think scripting is the coolest thing ever, and drink my coffee in silence and listen to affirmations. And it's like this tiny does 5 minutes maybe, right? But then at least and I notice when I don't do that and jump into my day, if I grab my phone or my kids are going or I have an early meeting, I'm on edge the rest of the day.
Yeah. I love that you listed those things. Those are multiple things, right?
Yeah.
Not looking at your phone, affirmations,
Mhm.
scripting, gratitude, coffee
Mhm.
in silence. And someone may listen to that and be like, well, that's 5 things.
Mhm.
But then you qualify that by saying it's 5 minutes,
Yeah,
right? This does not have to be the lofty 30-minute meditation. Great if you want to and you have
totally.
capacity,
Yeah.
and it's not necessary. Yeah, I think that's so important. I always say to people, like, is they say, well, I use my phone as my alarm clock. And I say, there are alarm clocks. We
Yes.
don't need our
Yes.
phones in our rooms.
No.
Certainly, there are moments, there are times when that's important. We may be in a stage of life where that is important, but there are ways to navigate our phones in this time where you can put your phone on do not disturb. You can say only
Mhm.
calls from this person are
Mhm.
allowed. There are ways to do that so that you're not looking at your phone to turn your alarm clock off. That's
Totally.
the first thing you do in the morning,
No,
right?
and that's crazy too. This is a whole other tangent we could go down. But because you're looking at your phone instead of your partner or your children or your pets, right? And it is, man, it is addictive. Like even I'll notice if I'm like chilling out with my partner at night, if I have my phone, I'll be distracted and I'll pick it up like 20 times in an hour. It's like a virus, my husband and I were saying, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Anyways, okay. So one tiny thing you could do, right, is just looking at how you can make space for yourself in the morning. And that awareness, I think, is so, so important. And for folks listening, even if you think you don't have the time, I encourage you to make the time just to start that reflection, right? And I think I'm even going to do it today just out of curiosity because I do a weekly review every week, but I've never looked at it from that sort of like, where am I on that stress response? So I love that.
Yeah. I think the other thing to really think about too is like, what are your inputs? So,
Hmm.
especially for people who have a commute, if you're driving kids around a lot, you're in the car, you're probably listening to something. Pay attention to what you're listening to. Pay attention to what you're reading. Pay
Hmm.
attention to what you're watching. Like, how did these external things that we're choosing,
Hmm.
how do they affect our system? So my partner and I, we like to watch a show in the evening, like I think probably 99% of
Hmm.
people. And sometimes we'll watch crazy drama, whatever, but I always want to finish with something funny.
Mhm.
So we've gone back and started watching the great sitcoms of the 90s, and they're 20-minute episodes, and we finish with that because I
Yeah.
want to finish on like a high note. I don't want to go to bed and be in this stressed out state about this person who's killing that person and cheating on that person. I don't want that. I don't want that in my area at all. And
It's
so,
I was just to say, it's so funny you say that because literally last night, my husband and I were watching this show on Apple TV called Presumed Innocent with Jake Gyllenhaal. I don't know if you've seen it.
nine.
Anyways, and it's like exactly that. And then so I watched that, shut the episode off, and then I went upstairs and I'm reading the book One Perfect Couple, which is also like a thriller. And then I was like vibrating, trying to fall
Like
asleep.
beating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's like what you can choose from like a TV perspective. But
Mhm.
maybe I had a patient actually who had a very long commute. It was like a 2-hour commute. And she was noticing how she would get to work and be like very stressed and activated. And I said, "What are you doing in the car other
Mhm.
than driving?" Of course, this is a highway driving. What are you
Mhm.
doing? And she was listening to those true crime
Okay.
podcasts. And
Yeah.
I was like, what if we like change that? What if we listened to something that was like either like a relaxing podcast, something
Mhm.
very like neutral, chill, or like calming music or
Mhm.
silence? And that was like a very simple shift she made and realized like she got to work feeling so much better because she hadn't just gone through the whole murder mystery.
It's so true. It's so like these tiny, simple things, right? So not only reflecting on where you're at, but maybe identifying small, little changes that you can make can be
Yeah.
really powerful.
It's all about balance, right? I think
Mhm.
that's what's so important to it is all about balance in Chinese medicine. We talk about the concepts of yin and yang, right?
Mhm.
Yin being that like more calming, grounding, feminine, like nutritive sort of energy in the body. Yang being more of that like doer, go, debated state.
Mhm.
And when we talk about that overall concept of yin and yang, it's like one cannot exist without the other. It's
Mhm.
just like we wouldn't have daytime if we didn't have nighttime. We need
Mhm.
contrast, we need balance, but they
Mhm.
have to keep each other in check. And so it's the same in our nervous system. Like the two sides have to keep each other in check.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so, and I think I really love that you pointed that out that you don't want to be all in one state because I think sometimes, like many of us, like our brains are, we have such a negative bias that immediately we're like, oh, I'm like, this is my fault. Right. And I'm like, I need to get all over here and I'm all the way over here. And just a reminder that we all live in this state of elevated sort of anxiety and attention parasympathetic. And it's okay to have some of that. It's just finding a closer balance. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. We just have to find that balance. And I think we can, yeah, all think about being in that full parasympathetic state where it's you're just like so chill and slow all
Mhm.
the time. And what does that turn into when that happens for a long time? It's like lack of motivation because cortisol, our
Mhm.
stress hormone, gives us that drive and that
Mhm.
motivation.
Mhm.
It gives us like low energy. It's lack of engagement. That's why we need to find this balance, right? So being on the either end too far, it's not supportive.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Any other sort of, so we talked about like understanding the nervous system and why we can get some of these symptoms that we get when we're in this chronic state of high stress. We've talked a little bit about how to gain awareness around it and start to identify small changes. Anything else you want to leave people with before I tell them where they can get more of your incredible energy?
Thank you. I think the breath is such a powerful tool. It's something that we hear about a lot.
Mhm.
And for that reminder of why our breath is so important, it's like this gateway between the two states of our nervous system. So we think about all of those automatic functions that our autonomic nervous system is in charge of. It's like our heart beating. We can't really control that without
Mhm.
high intensity exercise or something like that. But you can't sit there and say like beat faster, beat slower.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, you can't sit there and say move blood to this area of my body. You
Mhm.
can't say digest that lunch I just ate, right? You can't tell your body to do these things. Your breath will happen automatically, yes, but it's the only thing that you actually have the power to control. You
Mhm.
have the power to slow down your breath. You have the power to speed it up. You have the power to hold it. And so our breath is that gateway between our parasympathetic and our sympathetic state that you have control over in the moment. And that's why we say try and take calm, deep breaths, try and slow it
Mhm.
down. And there's certainly specific breath techniques that can be
Mhm.
beneficial. And most people aren't even aware of how they're breathing for the day. So that's another really powerful tool to start to tune into of just slowing down your breath, becoming aware of your breath. And then the next step would be trying to elongate your exhale.
Mhm.
So if you have the ability to count your breaths, depending on what you're doing, where you are, maybe you're inhaling for a count of 3, exhaling for a count of 5. When I give numbers like that, it's please do what's good
Mhm.
for you.
Mhm.
Certainly, if you're pregnant, you don't want to be holding your breath, but pay attention to what's going on in your body. You don't want to be gasping for breath because you're trying to elongate your exhale for so long. But slowing down that exhale starts to stimulate or
Mhm.
activate your weird words for the parasympathetic nervous system, but it does shift that focus onto that more relaxed state in your body. So you have the ability to do that in traffic. You can do that in a meeting. You can do that in the grocery store lineup. No one knows you're doing it.
I know. I love that. I always tell people to the box breathing
Mhm.
technique. So it's like when you breathe in over a count of 3 or 4, hold it in, breathe out, hold it out. And you may know this, but other folks may not, is that it's also called tactical breathing because they use it in like the SWAT team, right? So we're talking about people who are doing the most intense military exercises. Like they use the breath as a tool, right? Like it's so, so powerful. And I think you're right, like we often overlook it. And I've never heard of it before as that sort of a gateway, but it is so true. And it's actually really cool that it is one of the only things that does happen automatically. Like we could not even think about it all day long. And yet we can control it, right? It's
Mhm.
so powerful.
It's so powerful. And I think it's that idea around it's something you're already doing.
Mhm.
So let's
Yeah.
bring awareness to it and shift it.
Yeah. My dog's here. She's bringing awareness to herself. Can you see her? Tell Dad. Can you lie down? Great. I took her for a run this morning and everything. The other thing I think is really cool about the breath, and I learned this when I did some like meditation teacher training. It's like one of the only things that can actually connect you with the present, right? Because this moment is the present. And now this moment is the present. And now this moment is the present, right? And that's one thing that our breath like is always present with us and can help us get out of that like worry and perseverating over what happened or worrying about what's to come. Yeah, I don't think we can oversell the power of the breath.
Agreed. Agreed. And it's a really useful tool I find for people. I hear a lot about people laying in bed, their minds going, hard to
Mhm.
fall asleep, or like waking up in the night and challenging falling back asleep because your brain just starts going. And so that's another place where counting your breath can be really helpful.
Mhm.
I always equate it. It's the counting sheep thing, right? So it
Mhm.
gives you something to focus on that's fairly mundane, but at least with your breath and like focusing on your breath that way, you're doing something physiologically that's supportive for you. And so,
Yeah.
yes, your mind is, as you said, meditation, your mind is going to wander. That's what happens. And then it's come back to the breath. Just draw
Mhm.
it back to your breath.
Mhm.
Yes, that's happening. Come back to your breath.
Mhm.
Right. And like sometimes every breath we have to tell ourselves, come back to our breath, but it gets easier over time.
Yeah. Yeah, you're strengthening that sort of ability to
Mhm.
focus and to be present.
Yeah.
Amazing. So before we sign off, and I feel like we have to do 10 more podcasts, I wanted to ask if you could share a little bit about the work that you do both at your local clinic and then some of the online work that you do with your online business.
Yeah. So I co-own a clinic here in Victoria called Glow Integrative Clinic. So I have an in-person practice there, and it's a multidisciplinary integrative health clinic that supports primarily women's health across the lifespan. So certainly folks can come and see me there in person or any of our other practitioners there. And then I do online health coaching through Radiant Effect with Megan Eris, who is a somatic movement coach. And so the two of us support that mind, body, spirit for busy women.
And what sort of offerings do you guys have through Radiant Effect if you wanted to share? I don't know if you have anything available?
Yeah. Yeah. So well, first and foremost, we have a lot of free resources on our website. So we always really encourage people to go over to radianteffect.ca. There's lots of freebies there that can give you a lot of information about how to get started on learning and supporting your nervous system.
Mhm. Amazing. Amazing. And if people wanted to find you on social media, where do you typically hang out?
Hang out. I think my Instagram handle is at rachelmark.ca.
Amazing. Okay. So we'll share all of those resources in the show notes. I'm so grateful that we had the opportunity to have this conversation today. And is there any final sort of remarks or reflections you wanted to share before we say goodbye?
I think it's just that reminder that you're doing a good job.
Hmm.
I think we hear so much about here's all the things, as you
Hmm.
said earlier, like you should be doing, and we're inundated with that.
Hmm.
And I think we're all doing the best we can with the tools that we currently have. So it's really about if we want to change our experience, how do we add to our toolkit so we have more things to draw?
Totally. Totally. I agree. I think it's like we need to lift each other up more. And so I 100% agree. If you're listening to this, you're doing an amazing job. Good for you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to check out our website at www.shefoundhealth.ca and to sign up for our community for weekly bump blasts. Make sure to check us out on Instagram or Facebook at she.found.motherhood and head on over to your favorite podcast app and leave a review and a 5-star rating. If you enjoyed this podcast, take a pic of yourself listening to it and share it on social. Make sure to tag us on it so we know to keep making them.